John Henry. Summary of the Tall Tales. When John Henry was born, he already held a hammer in his hand. His proud mamma and papa took him outside on the porch to show him the world. It seemed everything in nature wanted to look at him. Birds, bears, panthers, moose, deer, squirrels, and even a unicorn came to take a peek. The animals all oohed and awed. Even the sun crept back into the sky, hiding behind the moon, to take a quick look at the boy. The baby suddenly jumped out of his mother's arms and began to grow right then and there. He grew so tall, and he grew so fast, that his head broke right through the porch roof. The next morning, John Henry was up before the sun. He was eager to get things done. First he helped his papa rebuild the porch and add on a wing to the house. Then he chopped down an acre of trees and split them into fireplace logs. As a boy, John Henry went into town one day and met a mean man named Ferret-faced Freddy. John Henry challenged Freddy to a race. They agreed that John Henry would race on his feet against Freddy on his horse. If Freddy won, John Henry would work for him for a year. If John Henry won, Freddy promised to be nice for a year. When they raced, John Henry got to the finish line so fast that he was drinking a soda in a rocking chair when Freddy and his horse rode up. After that, Freddy was so nice he was called Frederick the Friendly. One day, John Henry set out to make his way in the world. He carried with him two 20-pound sledgehammers with 4-foot handles that were made out of whalebone. John Henry came upon a crew building a road. A huge boulder stopped them. The workmen used dynamite, but they didn't even knock a chip off the boulder. John Henry began hitting the boulder with his hammers. While he worked, a rainbow draped itself around John Henry's shoulder. When the dust cleared, not only was the boulder chipped away, but John Henry had also finished building the stretch of road. John Henry went on to work building the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad through West Virginia. Some say he worked there a long time and that he married a girl named Polly Ann. First old Titus and then little Bill were the shakers that held his drill while he cut the holes to hold the powder to blast away the rock in making railroad tunnels. But a man called Josiah Haley kept coming around to the places where the railroad was being built. He would sell the boss a steam drill and put the men out of work. Then the men were forced to move on. In each new spot they had jobs for a while, but then Haley would show up again. John Henry got tired of this. One day, work stopped because the train track had to go right through a mountain. John Henry offered a challenge. John Henry said he'd use his hammers and tunnel through one side of the mountain, while the steam drill started on the other side. Whoever got to the middle of the mountain first won the race. Some say a rainbow draped itself around the outside of the mountain and waited while John Henry hammered away. All day and all night they raced. John Henry swung his hammer so hard that it kept catching on fire and the tunnel glowed with blue flame. The next day, John Henry broke through the rock and met the astonished people running the steam drill. John Henry had come 1.25 miles straight through the mountain, while the steam drill had only come 1/4 mile. John Henry proudly stepped out in front of the crowd and raised a hammer in each hand. The rainbow draped itself around his shoulders. Then John Henry fell to the ground. His heart had burst. At first the crowd was quiet. Then everyone seemed to hear the same whisper. Dying ain't important. Everybody does that. What matters is how well you do your living. John Henry had lived well. The crowd began to clap. Some stories say he was taken to Washington and buried on the White House lawn. Others say John Henry was buried near the railroad track in West Virginia.